Last time we went to the lake, noticed a smell like burnt rubber. Thought, ooh, somebody's got a problem on their trailer. Yeah, it was us. And we noticed that this cap was sticking out, which that's what it's designed to do. These are oil-filled hubs, and which are way better than greasable hubs, especially on a boat, because if you think about it, while you're driving down the highway on your way to the lake, heat is created in the bearings, just natural. And then as soon as you back it into the water, it gets cold really fast, which means any air in there is going to contract, which pulls water in through the seals and greases and waters your bearings. So the grease and the water are now mixed, and it's not lubricating properly. That's why you always notice there's that really odd color to the grease in your... Oh, here comes Amazon. So there's always that really odd color to your bearings on your trailer. So anyway, oil-filled hubs are great because they're liquid-filled and you don't have to worry about them leaking typically. But when heat's generated, these inner, what they call like a sight glass, or these are supposed to be clear, they stick out to let you know there's a problem because of the heat and the expansion. If there's no air in there, it won't expand because liquids don't tend to expand due to heat. So we definitely have a problem. I'm guessing this problem is this brake caliper is sticking because I can't move this at all. And our truck definitely doesn't like towing this boat with the brakes locked up. We let a little pressure off, hoping that would help release this piston. You always want to do that when it's at the highest point. Otherwise you could introduce air into your system, then you got a whole nother problem of bleeding your brakes. Seems to be a little movement now on the slide pins, which is good. This tells us it's not a bearing issue, at least not yet. But we clearly have a leak, which is probably was caused from this being expanded. And it's pretty old, so if you start exercising that stuff, you start finding weak points. We've got some oil to replace this hub, to replace the oil in this hub. These pins, although they did seem to slide pretty well, it's always a good idea to put some brake glide or some brake grease on these. Otherwise they could get in a bind if they're not going straight in and out and cause a problem with your caliper and hanging up of your brakes. So that's really important, especially on something like a boat trailer, because you're backing it in and out of the water constantly. So even if it is greased, it's highly likely that it'll be washed off. There's a lot of rust around this boot, which could also hold things up if that's past this point, and keep this piston from retracting back into the caliper like it's supposed to. We'll look at pricing, but it's probably a good idea when you start seeing signs like this. You can maybe get an overhaul kit, which would be a piston and its O-rings that are inside the caliper. But usually you can just order a whole new caliper assembly, and it's almost just as cheap, or it's almost the same price as buying the parts that you need. And it comes as an assembly that you can basically just bolt it on and bleed the brakes, and you're done, instead of having to concern yourself with disassembling and reassembling these calipers. Put pressure against the piston inside this caliper to where like it's extremely tight. I wouldn't want to tighten it any more than that. and I can loosen this bleeder like completely and no fluid comes out. That tells me that this physical pressure is not creating any hydraulic pressure inside the caliper, so it's pretty likely that this piston is hung up inside, mechanically hung up, not hydraulically hung up. You could disassemble it and try to clean it up some and put it back together just for the next lake trip, but more than likely this thing's going to need to be replaced or rebuilt. So, put a call into our local trailer supply business, and they asked me to send them pictures of this caliper to see if they have one in stock. So I has. I thought while we wait, go ahead and finish changing this oil. So these are pretty basic. You turn them upside down to empty them, and then you turn them right side up to fill them, and you try to get it completely full, because like we spoke about earlier, air will expand and contract whenever you have that hot and then cold dip into the water. So making sure you don't have any air in here is going to prevent it from wanting to leak when the temperature gets changed rapidly. Alright, let's see what the trailer place says. Looks to me like they sent us a picture of a brake caliper sitting on the shelf. It's a pro tip. Always take your old parts with you to ensure fitment for the new ones. Let's get this towel. I think these are same, huh? I like it. It does look same.
I sent you a picture. You should have figured it out.
I know, but I couldn't see the measurements on your photograph.
Well, it's because I didn't put any.
Right. That's where I was going with that too. Well, it looks to me like it's gonna work.
I'm pretty sure it's the same freaking thing because it's the same one they've used.
No, it's fully loaded.
It is.
All right, let's get it.
That?
It makes all the difference in the world when you go to a business that knows what they're doing. So before we get too excited, start worrying about plumbing this thing and bleeding it, etc., let's make sure it'll bolt up. So we should be good. Just transfer over our brake fitting and then get it bled. These bolts that come with these calipers already have a thread locker on them, so you don't have to so much worry about any kind of locking washer to prevent them from backing out. So this is a one-man bleeding system, and I've used it several times, but I'm missing the magnet holder for my little vial. The idea is to just be able to have one person bleeding the brakes, and you get the fluid pumped through and get the air out. So in order to not draw air backwards, you'll see this eventually, you put a little fluid in this bottle, and this will go down in there, then hook this to your brake bleeder. All right, now you kind of want this to be able to be held up so the air can still escape and come up to the top. but if any reason it pulled a vacuum backwards, you want this to have fluid in it so it doesn't pull air back. Honestly, anywhere it sits above there is good. So I'm gonna go put some pressure on the front. So my method up front to do this by myself, since these are compression brakes, which means when the vehicle stops, it creates pressure and compresses this like a piston where your master cylinder is inside this tongue, and therefore forcing pressure out to your brakes. It still looks pretty full. I'm going to go ahead and give it another compression. I'm gonna go back and see what happened here. There's probably more fluid than I had added here. Again, this is just loose, so it'll let fluid come right on out. So the last thing we need to do before we put the wheel back on and get this job all buttoned up is make sure the brakes actually work here. So you can see we have no contact. Then I'm going to go up front and compress them. We'll see what happens. Yeah, that's not moving. Alright, so I took our strap back off so that can relieve itself, and almost just as important as it's stopping is making sure it's releasing, because that's what started our project today in the first place, is it wouldn't let go of the brakes. You can see, as soon as we let the pressure off at the tongue, this hub spins freely. So it appears that this is a job well done, but the test drive is always the truth teller. Alright, rolling out of the driveway works just fine. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I can feel that. But again, the problematic caliper had no problem trying to stop. It was the letting go that it wasn't very good at. So while we're out and about with this boat behind us, we might as well go dump another $100 putting fuel in it. So when we're ready to go to the lake, that's one less thing we got to deal with. It's not too hot to the touch, but we haven't drove far enough to measure it. Meanwhile, we'll just keep putting gas in her. I think we're going to call this a successful day. The only additional thing I would know to test it is to get home and jack up that one wheel and make sure it spins freely to ensure that that caliper is releasing, which I'm pretty sure that it is. So sorry there's no F100 video, but just waiting on parts from everyone, like Holly and the machine shop, and I don't know, I'm sure there's one or two others in there that I'm waiting on stuff from. Seats are at the upholsterer, but he just got them, so I can't really complain about that. Anyway, that's it and that's all. We'll see you later, y'all.